welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'll be ranking the DLCs from first to worst, starting off with number 6 and going all the way up to number 1, which it would be my favorite DLC. Anyways, let's get into the video and let's see what in my opinion what is the worst DLC and all the way up to the first. Start the video, be sure to like and subscribe and also turn on the notifications to all, and let's get into the video now. Off with number 6, in my opinion, which is the Flames of the Nether DLC. Now, in my opinion, it wasn't that good, but some of you guys might think differently, as it was not related to the Orb of Dominance or anything, and never had really any true boss. Obviously, there was that unused mob called the Wildfire, which would have been a boss, but they scrapped it. Obviously, I think they could add they should add a boss related to the Orb of Dominance, like the Wither or even the Obsidian Monstrosity. Items and the weapons are obviously cool, and obviously since they didn't add any cool boss or anything, they added 6 brand new levels on each of the biomes and 1 on the Nether Fortress. They could obviously make it cooler, like I said, by adding another boss or adding some more like brand new Nether themed mobs. I mean, because all the other mobs were kind of already in the Nether update, so they could have added some more new ones, maybe like the Wildfire, which they might have added, or another like maybe, I don't know, maybe like, mushroom type thingy related to the Crimson or Forest. Obviously, you guys might think differently, so comment down below which is your most favorite and your least favorite DLC. Anyways, let's move on to number 5. Is the Jungle Awakens DLC. Now, I like this DLC story as it has the Orb of Dominance, unlike the Flames of the Nether DLC. Well, the Flames of the Nether was still good, but Jungle Awakens is better because it still follows the storyline and is the first DLC to ever get released. Now, the DLC is good and all. The boss is the Jungle Abomination, and it's actually one of the hardest bosses to defeat, well, most HP, and the mobs were cool and all. But anyways, I feel like they could have added a mini boss, maybe transforming one of the leap leaves into one. But I also think they could also add some more artifacts or weapons like the other DLCs, aka the ones in the season pass where they got like a ton of new weapons and items. The levels are cool and it's themed in the jungle. I feel like they could have added maybe one more level, but that's not usually the style. But anyways, this is number 5, as it is obviously some improvements to do, as in maybe adding new like artifacts or weapons, but everything else is cool, like the mobs and the levels. Alright, moving on to number 4. Creeping Winter DLC. Now this DLC is kind of one of my favorites, but had some similar improvements, could have some similar improvements with the Jungle Awakens. Now, same with the Jungle Awakens, I think they could have added more items and gear and even maybe a melee weapon, because there was no melee weapon added during the Creeping Winter DLC. I mean, like, exclusive to the DLC. Anyways, they could have also maybe added, not a mini boss, but maybe some more, the artifacts as well. Maybe like something like the Corrupted Beacon, but instead it'd shoot like freezing rays, chilling the mobs. The DLC had 3 levels: the Frosted Fjord, the Lone Fortress, and the Lost Settlement. Now, I feel like for the boss fight, it's a pretty simple boss fight. You can kill the boss pretty easily. It is the Wretched Wraith. They could have made it a bit harder, but I think I'm pretty fine with this with the boss fight at the moment. Anyways, there's the armors are the snow armor and the what's it called? I forgot the name, but I have to double check because it's actually the armor that I use. And the artifacts are the Ice Wand, and the bows or the ranged weapons are the Winter's Touch and Snow Bow. Anyways, they could have also added maybe another level, but like I said, the same with the Jungle Awakens DLC, it wouldn't fit the usually 3 level usually theme. Anyways, it actually continues with the Orb of Dominance, in which a Wraith is infected by the Orb of Dominance and turns into the Wretched Wraith, spreading a creeping winter all over the place. Obviously, at the start of Frosted Fjord, there was a village, so maybe the objective there could be to free some villagers, which would make sense, because obviously if there are no villagers in the village, then it's abandoned, but we don't know what's going to happen. But obviously that doesn't have to happen, and I think the DLC is still pretty much fine. So yeah. Alright, moving on to the third one. At number 3 is the Howling Peaks DLC. Some of you might think differently about the Howling Peaks DLC, but obviously this is in my opinion. It might be the same as yours, but I'm just trying to show you what DLCs are good to buy and which DLCs aren't. Anyways, number 3 is the Howling Peaks DLC, and I like this DLC as it also adds lots of mobs from the Creeping Winter and adds it also into the Howling Peaks DLC, which is obviously very cool, so you get to experience some familiar and non-familiar foes. Now, the boss for this DLC was the Tempest Golem, which was actually probably the hardest boss to defeat, because when its flaps were closed, you wouldn't be able to do any damage, or you'd be able to do damage, but not a lot. And it would take probably hours if you were just to keep hitting it. Anyways, this is a good DLC as it added a ton of new ranges of weapons and items, like a lot more items and weapons than the previous Jungle Awakens and Creeping Winter DLCs. They also added a ton of new artifacts, also like the also added a ton of new artifacts, and also they added 3 new levels, just like the other ones. Actually, 4 levels. It is the Gauntlet of Gales, the Gale Sanctum, the Windswept Peaks, and the Colossal Rampart. They also added an exclusive mob that is found in the Colossal Rampart on Ancient Hunts. It's like a mini boss, but not really like a mini boss. It is the Rampart Captain. It's like an early version of the raid captains. It carries an omnibus banner and is trying to invade this little coastal area at the bottom of the mountain. Anyways, this DLC is obviously a very good DLC and is kind of one of my top 3 favorites. And I actually still play it a bit. Not a lot, but it's a cool DLC as it also adds the Ravager mob, which is like an illager mob, which I think should be in every single level. It may be so, but it's still a cool mob to be found, and it's a cool mob that finally got added to the game, and it's pretty cool. The Howling Peaks DLC is, like I said, it's one of my favorites, so I definitely recommend for you guys to use it. And alright, moving on to number 2. DLC. Now, this was definitely my favorite DLC, and I had one of my favorites, and I don't have any bad complaints about it, except for some glitches that wouldn't allow you to kill the boss. Anyways, it's a cool DLC. It takes place under the ocean and gives obviously a ton of new gear, items, artifacts, and weapons. Now, the boss is the Ancient Guardian, in which is a Elder Guardian that has been corrupted by the Orb of Dominance. You can fight through 3 new levels, and each 3 new levels consisting of the Radiant Ravine, the Coral Rise, and Abyssal Monument. The Abyssal Monument takes place at an ocean monument. The Coral Rise takes place at a coral reef, and the Radiant Ravine takes place in a ravine/volcano. Anyways, in the Abyssal Monument itself, you can actually find this huge sub-dungeon, which is basically a level on its own, and you get rewarded with an obsidian chest after completing that. Obviously, this DLC takes place underwater, and obviously still continues the story of the Orb of Dominance, like I said. Anyways, there are obviously some new mobs, not all, which, like I said, the Trident Drown, and also the Kelp Whisperer, which is an underwater variant of the Whisperer. There's also the Guardian, and also some other new mobs. There's also like the Sunken Skeleton, which is an underwater skeleton that uses a crossbow to shoot a bow or a crossbow to shoot underwater arrows, aka harpoons. Alright, that's all the good stuff and bad stuff. That's not the good stuff, but that's all I have to say for the Hidden Depths. Let's move on to my most favorite DLC. As you can guess, is the Echoing Void DLC. Now, some of you might not like this DLC, but in my opinion, I think it's the best DLC that there is, and it takes place in the end, and this DLC is also my favorite because it concludes the story of the Arch-Illager and the Orb of Dominance. Now, there might be some spoiler warnings in this, but the boss is the Vengeful Heart of Ender, and is basically a remake of the Heart of Ender. After the Heart of Ender was destroyed, another orb came to the end and took form of the Vengeful Heart of Ender. Now the mobs are obviously cool, and there are obviously some cool new Endermen out there to explore, e.g. like the Watchling, which is basically an Enderman with many eyes, so it teleports to the player and then hits the player. Obviously, it's added some very overpowered weapons, like the Obsidian Claymore, which is now a complete boss destroyer. It can pretty much now just wreck bosses. This also added basically 3 new levels: a Stronghold level, in which you actually have to find Eyes of Ender located around the overworld. Then a level called the End Wilds, which takes place in the end like coarse fruit forest, and then goes into some lush areas with onto an end city. And the final level is the Broken Citadel, in which you're at like a citadel, big city thing, and you have to confront the vengeful Heart of Ender. Obviously, this adds a ton of new weapons and is probably the best DLC. Obviously, like I said, it concludes the whole story, which is also obviously like a very cool DLC to conclude it, and like a good way to conclude it in the end. Anyways, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it and you found this helpful of which DLC you guys might prefer, or I mean what I might prefer. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're almost at 200 subscribers. Just two more subs away. So just be sure to make that red sub button green. And I'll see you all next time in another video. Peace out. Goodbye.